Hello friends, welcome back to another video. If you are new to my channel, my name is Crystal. Thank you so much for watching. We've got a lot of books to talk about today and I'm so excited. So I'm going to be talking about all the books that I read in May, and then I'm going to go through my June TBR. I only have 3 books on my TBR for June. Usually I read about 5 to 7 books a month, but in June, I am going to be reading very slowly. You'll see why when I talk about my June books. So let's get into the books that I read for May. First book I read is If He Had Been With Me by Laura Nolan. This is a young adult fiction. I think it is technically labeled as a romance, and while I do think it has a romance kind of subplot, I guess you could say, to me this is more young adult coming of age fiction with a subplot of romance. But this book is about Autumn and Finn, and they were friends since they were little. They used to be inseparable. They were the best of friends, and then of course as they started getting a little bit older and getting into high school, they kind of just grew apart and went their separate ways. But they still lived next door to each other, and their moms are really good friends, so they still would see each other and interact with each other on holidays, special occasions, things like that. And then when they're in high school, they each have a significant other. But there has always been this feeling in Autumn's heart that she just has a really soft spot for Finn. And Autumn is in this relationship with her boyfriend, but she keeps crossing paths with Finn. And that starts bringing up questions in her head. Like, what if things were different? What if I were to tell him exactly how I feel? Like, how would things have been different? I ended up giving this book 4 stars. This was actually the book that we read in my book club. There were definitely mixed emotions on this book. Some people didn't like it and some people really enjoyed it. I think you do have to know going in that this reads very, very young adult. So this is being told from the perspective of someone who is in high school, just sharing all the things that she's thinking as she's going through high school. And that has to do with her friendships, thoughts within herself, about herself, thoughts about her relationship with her boyfriend and her relationship with Finn. And so if you imagine your mindset when you are in high school, that is similar to how this reads. So just know going in that if you can just imagine like a teenage girl's diary and a teenage girl's thoughts, this book reads that way. I think for me, this book was just very relatable. Like some of the things that she was thinking about, I was like, I remember being that age and thinking that way. So I just related to Autumn very much. Obviously, there were some things that were very different than how I felt when I was her age, but there were some things that she talked about where I was like, I know exactly how she feels. This is also written very differently. It's almost written in a very like lyrical kind of poetic way. It's hard to explain, but the writing of this is very different than anything I've read. And so when I first started reading this, I did have to adjust a little bit to the writing because it felt very like matter of fact, like dun, 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 dun. Like I don't know how to explain it unless you read this, but the writing was something that I did have to get used to when I started reading this book. But once I got used to it, I really ended up enjoying it. Like the last few chapters of this book, like they are emotional. If you're gonna read this, just know going in, it is sad. It's not like a super happy ending. So 4 stars for me on this one. Then I read Queen of Shadows, which is is this the 5th book in the Throne of Glass series? Assassin's Blade, Throne of Glass, Crown of Midnight, Air of Fire. Yes, this is the 5th book. I absolutely loved this book so much. This was like an easy 5 stars for me. So the book that I read before this, one of the books I read last month, was Air of Fire, and I actually did not really love Air of Fire. I gave that 3.5 stars. That one was pretty difficult for me to get through. This one was amazing. It was so good. So this one picks up obviously right where Air of Fire leaves off, and a lot of the storylines that start in Air of Fire get wrapped up in this book. I can't really say too much about this one without spoiling it because obviously this is like in the middle of the series, and so pretty much anything I say about this is going to spoil the other books. Just speaking in general, this book is very dark and witchy. I will say one of the characters and one of the storylines in this book is about a witch and a witch and her coven, which I just eat that up. Like anything about witches, sign me up. This has witches, it has demons, it has like tons of magic in it. It was so good. So good. The next book I read is Meet Me at the Lake by Carly Fortune. If you want to see me do a very in-depth review of this book, I have a reading vlog on my channel. I will link it down in the description. But I ended up giving this one 4 stars, and then as I've kind of been thinking about it a little bit more, this was actually more of like a 3.5 star read for me. I gave it 4 simply because of Carly Fortune's writing. Like I just love her writing so much. I wanted a little bit more depth and more things going on that like affected me, you know. I when I'm reading a book, I want to feel something, and this book honestly didn't really make me feel all that much other than the writing itself. Like, obviously I love Carly Fortune's writing so much, but in terms of like the plot and the storyline and the characters, I didn't really like feel a ton. This takes place in a then and now timeline, and it is about Fern and Will, who meet 10 years earlier, and they spend like 24 hours together and have a really great day together, but both of them are in relationships, and so it's obviously not the right timing for them, but there is a mutual attraction there. They make a pact and they decide to meet up 1 year later at Fern's mom's lake resort, which is basically where Fern grew up. And Fern shows up, but Will doesn't. So obviously Fern is very heartbroken. 9 years later, Fern has pretty much taken over managing this lake resort that she grew up on, and Will ends up showing up, and she's like, I know you. So the story kind of takes off from there. I really did enjoy the setting of this book, but the plot and the storyline were just missing a lot for me. This is just sort of like your little fluffy, cute, cozy romance. If you're looking for something light and something mindless to read and something, I don't know, cozy and lighthearted, then I think that this would be a good one to pick up. Next book is by Danielle Steele. This is The Wedding Planner. I actually partnered up with Random House to review this book on my main page for May. I really ended up enjoying this. I gave this 4 stars. This book is about Faith, who is a very well-renowned wedding planner in New York City. So she is known for planning really big, extravagant weddings. Faith is someone who has been engaged 2 times, but both of her engagements have failed. And she is one of those people that has vowed to never get married, basically. So she's like, nope, it's not for me. But Faith is in the midst of planning 3 weddings for 3 different clients, and these clients are very different. And while she is helping them plan their weddings, she has also become very close to them, and so she's been helping them kind of get through their dark secrets, their family scandals, like it's a lot of drama, and she's pretty much helping them through all of that. But I had such a fun time reading this. I especially just loved all the drama that came along with this. But I think this is a perfect book to read this time of year. But it was charming, it was fun, and this is one of those books that like just I always wanted to keep turning the pages. I read this in less than 24 hours. And it's a fairly short book. I think it's only like, yeah, it's not even 300 pages. So this is a very quick, fast read. And I mean, Danielle Steele, she's the queen. So yeah, I really enjoyed this one. If you were looking for a very fast read and something that is going to keep your attention all the time, and you like a lot of drama, then you would really enjoy this one. Oh, last but certainly not least, I read Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. Last video I posted is my full review on this book. So if you want to hear a very in-depth, detailed review of this book, I will also link that one down below in the description. But this book, 1,000,000 stars, 1,000,000 stars. Like, this is one of the best books I've ever read. This is one of my new favorite books ever. This is an adult fantasy book mixed with a subplot of romance. And this is about Violet, who is going into a war college, and she is about to compete to be a dragon rider, which is like the elite of the elite. But Violet is someone who is very frail. She's really small. She's not very strong. And so in order to be a dragon rider, you have to go through all these different like challenges and trials, and they're all very physical. And because Violet is very small and just not your typical stature of a dragon rider, everyone has kind of written her off. This is a very high stakes fantasy where it's like a lot of things that they go through are like life or death. But the thing about Violet is that she is very, very smart, and so she uses that to her advantage. Now, of course, there's also a subplot of romance in this book, and Violet ends up meeting Xaden, and he is the most powerful, the most ruthless wing leader in the Riders Quadrant in the war college that they're in. And Xaden and Violet hate each other because something happened between their families that basically made them the biggest enemies. This book, like, I can't even tell you how freaking good this book is. The action scenes in here, the dragons, like, I don't think I've ever felt so connected to action scenes before. I've read a lot of fantasy books, and there's a lot of action scenes in fantasy books, but the way that these scenes are written, I felt like I was there. It's the only way I can describe it. Like, my heart was pounding. It was on the edge of my seat. And I don't really feel like that a lot in books. When I read action scenes, like I'm reading them and they're good and everything, but they don't typically have like a physical effect on me. But these scenes did. Like there were so many scenes in here where I literally could feel my heart like racing. Romance is also so good. There are 2 spicy scenes in this book, so if you don't like spice, then there are scenes that you could easily just kind of pass over. I would say to still read this book though. Even if you don't like spice, please still read this book. But I cannot wait for the second book to come out. It comes out November 7th, I believe. And this, from what I know, is going to be a 5-book series. But I love this so much and this book will stay with me forever. All right, so let's move on to my June TBR. I only have 3 books on my TBR for June, and that is for good reason. If I end up reading more than 3 books, then that's amazing. But in terms of my goal, these are going to be my only goal for June. First up, we have Part of Your World by Abby Jimenez. We are reading this in my book club. This is our June book club pick. So I'm going to be reading this to start off the month. Just by reading the back really quickly, the idea that I'm getting for this one is that we have Alexis and we have Daniel, and they are both from very opposite worlds. So Daniel is a carpenter. He's 10 years younger than her, and Alexis is more of like a city girl. Her parents are very wealthy, and I'm assuming that they fall for each other, but their worlds kind of collide. But I am nonetheless very excited to read this. I have been wanting to read an Abby Jimenez book for a while now. I am going into this in my mind knowing that it is more of like a lighthearted romance. I am someone who I'm very picky with rom-coms. Like rom-coms usually aren't my thing. Like I love dark romance and darker types of books, but I'm going into this knowing, putting it into my head that that's the kind of book that it is. And so I don't know, hopefully I'll enjoy it. Okay, the next 2 books I'm going to talk about together because I'm going to be reading these 2 books together. These are the next books in the Throne of Glass series. We have Tower of Dawn and Empire of Storms, and I'm going to be reading these 2 as a tandem read. So I'm going to be reading them together at the same time. I've been anticipating this tandem read for so long, and to be honest, I'm like a little bit intimidated by it. I'm like a little bit nervous because I've never done something like this before, and these books are thick. They're really thick. I think they're like, I don't know, 700 pages each or something. I'm someone who reads fantasy books very slow. I just like want to make sure that I'm like grasping everything. There's just a lot going on. There's a lot of characters, all of the detail and the world building and all of that kind of stuff. In a fantasy book, it just takes me longer to get through them. So I don't want to rush through these. That's why I'm only giving myself a 3-book goal for this month, because I really want to take my time with this tandem read, and I just want to be sure that I just take in and enjoy every second of it. If you have no idea what I'm talking about when I say a tandem read, basically what I'm going to be doing is I found a reading guide on Instagram somewhere and I saved it, and I'm going to be printing it out, but it's basically, I'll put it here on the screen just so y'all can see what I'm talking about and get a visual. But it's basically, it tells you which chapters to read in each book. And so you're basically alternating between the 2 books, because these 2 books, from what I know, are taking place at the exact same time. And you get the best reading experience when you tandem read them, when you read them at the same time, rather than reading them completely separate of each other. But yeah, you basically follow that chart and you read certain chapters from one book, and then you move to the other book and read certain chapters from that, and then you go back to the other one, read certain chapters from this. You kind of do that obviously until you're finished with the books. These will definitely be a part of my video next month, like in my June wrap up. I'll probably share my thoughts then. The series has been such a great experience so far, and I've been looking forward to this tandem read for quite some time now. So I can't believe the time is finally here. Anyway, y'all, I think that's it for this video. If you enjoyed watching, I would appreciate it if you would like my video, subscribe to my channel, do all the YouTube things, comment down below if you've read any of the books that I talked about in this video. I would love to hear from y'all. And yeah, I think that's it for me today, guys. Again, I hope y'all enjoyed watching, and I will see y'all in my next video. Bye.